stress in the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The real question here is how our emotional state creates our stress. And from here on forth, I'm going to be using our and we language because this was me as well. This was my experience. And those of us who develop an autoimmune disease, we come from that same fabric, that same background. We have the same experience emotionally that led up to our autoimmune diseases. So, individuals like myself who developed an autoimmune disease, the problem is that we have lived our life with an unhealthy internal emotional state, which means that we are easily overwhelmed and incapable of handling the emotional challenges of life. Now, I know when I was younger, I was just told that I was much more highly sensitive, which is a really nicer way of just saying I was much more easily overwhelmed and incapable of handling the challenges because, again, I had an unhealthy internal emotional state. And it's this unhealthy internal emotional state that we have that creates the lens, like glasses, that we see and perceive our world through. So, as a result, the common challenges of life, both big and small, also known as stressors, they're interpreted through our lens, through our glasses, and are perceived as highly emotionally overwhelming, also known as stressful. Now, our experience of stress comes from us. Our experience of stress comes from us. To better understand this, I'm going to give you an example I call it the flying on an airplane example. Because up until I came here to a New Life Center, I really thought that my stress was coming from the things, the people, the circumstances, my past, my parents, my upbringing. I thought it was coming from the world around me. I had no idea that my experience of stress was actually coming from within me. Now, back to the flying on the airplane. I want you to imagine an airplane and put yourself into that airplane, sit in one of those seats, and I want you to look around. And we're going to explore the different kinds of individuals and the varying stress responses they can all have to the exact same stimuli flying on an airplane. Now, some of you might even know a person. I have a friend who has such a high stress response to airplane rides that she doesn't fly at all. She wouldn't even be on that airplane. Her emotional stress is so high. Now, you also might know someone like my grandmother who very high emotional stress response from flying on an airplane. So she takes medication to help her with that experience. You also might see someone like myself on that airplane who I have a little bit of a stress response in the beginning when the takeoff and the turbulence, and I kind of ease in as we ease into that flight. So, I'd say a medium to low stress response. And then you're also going to know or see people like my sister, who I say is more comfortable in the air than she is on land. And she has an almost non existent stress response to flying on an airplane to the point that she's already sleeping before the flight takes off and will continue sleeping even through all of the turbulence. Now, let's take a moment and step back and really think about this. If stress was coming from outside of us, then everyone would have the same stress response to the same stimuli, that airplane flight. But no, as humans, we all have varying degrees of different responses of stress. So, what is that telling us? Is that stress truly does come from us. It's how we interpret the airplane ride through our internal emotional state, right? Either healthy or unhealthy, that determines our stress experience. Remember, our internal emotional state is the lens we see everything through and thus determines our stress experience. Stress comes from us. This is a good thing because it means that we are in control of our stress and thus we can change our stress experience. This is key to healing an autoimmune disease. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, let's explore the connection between emotional stress and the creation of autoimmune diseases. Here at a New Life Center, we have found that there is always a major life stressor that creates an autoimmune disease. As I had shared, mine was the death of my dad when I was 15. And 6 months later, I developed rheumatoid arthritis. Now, again, here are the most common major life stressors that we find create autoimmune disease, and this is particularly true for women. Starting high school or graduating university, getting married, getting pregnant and having a child, losing a loved one, especially a close loved one, like a spouse, a child, a mother, or a father. Now, why do major life stressors like the ones I shared create autoimmune disease? Well, as women, and remember, 80% of autoimmune diseases happen to women. As women, we suppress our emotional stress. We suppress our emotional stress because we are pain avoiders, whereas men are naturally problem solvers. Men solve their problems and are not living generally with ongoing stress. But as women, we don't deal with our problems, also known as stressors. We suppress the emotional pain of life. Now, why do we do this? Well, we live life suppressing our emotional stress because while highly emotionally overwhelmed by life, we are as women, the problem is that we not only are pain avoiders, but we want our life to be like line, a straight line, easy, in control at all times, no challenges known. And we all know that that's not the real nature of life. There's always challenges and unforeseen stressors and loss down the road. And we don't want to deal with this because we're a pain avoider. So we suppress all the emotional pain. And what happens? It doesn't go away. I didn't know when I started suppressing my emotional pain because I wanted my life to be like a straight line, that suppressed emotional stress didn't just disappear. What happens is it grows and builds inside our physical body. And as women, we end up living with a pressure cooker of suppressed emotional stress inside of us. This internal emotional pressure cooker continues to grow and build and eventually gets set off by a major life stressor, like the ones I just shared, dysregulating the immune system and creating an autoimmune disease. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today. If you have an autoimmune disease or chronic illness, are frustrated with medications, supplements, or food diets, and are ready to start the journey to finally and permanently healing your condition, I have two 13-week online self-guided educational programs, the Autoimmune Healing Program and the Chronic Illness Healing Program. Both programs teach you how to permanently heal your autoimmune disease or chronic illness, leave behind those doctor's visits and symptom management, and to finally heal without supplements, medication, or food diets. This is the same journey I took and why I am over 10 years completely healthy. All 8 of my autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses are permanently gone. You can find the link to apply for a complimentary course consultation with me down in the description below. And if you're not ready to take this step, watch my free 101 course on autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses. You'll also find the link to watch this down in the description. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today. I look forward to you permanently healing your autoimmune disease or chronic illness.